this case is that the substance of the charge is that Ariel Robinson is charged with causing the death of a child under the age of 11.
For Austin to come upstairs, and he came in the room when she was on her stool, and he looked at me and he was like, "Is she breathing?" And I said,
by child abuse or neglect under circumstances that exhibit an extreme indifference to human life. And then you will hear the devastating series of events that go from Tori trying to eat some pancakes to a child beaten to a pulp.
We were just here as representation for Victoria, and that she was.
A little girl, police say, was beaten to death, a crime that has shocked the upstate, leaving many heartbroken as they learn the details of 3-year-old Victoria Rose's death. Ariel and Jerry Robinson are now charged with homicide by child abuse, accused of causing the death of a child under the age of 11 through abuse or neglect under circumstances showing extreme indifference to human life. The devastating events began with Victoria simply trying to eat some pancakes and ended with a child beaten to death. Advocates stood in court as representation for Victoria, reminding the world that she was loved. Victoria did not die in a dangerous neighborhood. She was killed in the home of a Food Network star, a woman who taught America how to cook and often proclaimed her love for children. Just 10 months earlier, Victoria was a happy, healthy little girl who adored the color pink, cupcakes, and dolls. But 1 month before her death, she had become an emaciated, terrified shadow of herself. A day before her death, witnesses saw her at church, undressed and shivering in the cold as her adoptive mother scolded her. An hour before her death, her adoptive father stood outside listening to her desperate cries of pain, yet spent that entire hour finding tasks to avoid going inside. Victoria had been taken from a troubled family and placed in what seemed to be a perfect one, but saving her became a death sentence. She was born on March 27, 2017, in Greenville, South Carolina, the third child of Cassie and Bradley Smith. From the start, she was adored by her older brothers, Jaden and Colton, and known for her expressive gaze and infectious smile. The family wasn't wealthy, but was happy, until social services intervened after marijuana traces were found in Victoria's blood at birth. Despite Cassie's efforts to comply with their demands, the children were removed from her care after she accidentally fell asleep from exhaustion while the kids were safe at home. Pressured to sign voluntary surrender papers, Cassie gave up her children believing it was temporary, not knowing she was signing her daughter's death warrant. Victoria thrived in her first foster home with the West family, who adored her and nurtured her love for dolls, dress-up, and all things shiny. She was healthy, joyful, and deeply loved. But in 2020, the Department of Social Services decided to place her permanently with Ariel and Jerry Robinson, who seemed perfect on paper, educated, stable, and willing to take all 3 siblings. The Wests were devastated, but their pleas were ignored. At first, Ariel appeared loving, posting happy family photos online, and even winning the Food Network show Worst Cooks in America in August 2020. Publicly, she portrayed herself as a devoted mother, but behind the scenes, inconsistencies emerged. She spoke out against child abuse, yet joked about hitting children during stand-up performances. By the time warning signs surfaced, it was too late. Victoria had gone from a happy, vibrant child to a frail, terrified little girl, ultimately losing her life at the hands of the very people who were supposed to protect her. "It's a gang, you know. We got approved." Publicly, Ariel condemned violence against children. On stage, she even joked about hitting, but no one ever connected these two sides of her personality. By the fall of 2020, Victoria began to look different in photos. Her smile looked forced. Her cheeks grew thinner. There were strange marks on her wrists, a black eye, red spots on her neck, but they passed as unnoticed details in an endless stream of happy family pictures. The family looked perfect. The COVID-19 pandemic played a fatal role. Social services switched to virtual inspections of foster families. For Ariel, it was the perfect cover. A social worker would later testify that they saw no reason for concern, because no one actually looked for any. By winter, the changes in Victoria were impossible to miss. She had lost weight, became quiet, cautious, the energetic little princess, Commander was turning into a frightened child. Anyone experienced with children would recognize the signs of domestic abuse. The adoption was supposed to be finalized on January 19, 2021. Victoria had less than a month left to live. January 13, 2021. That morning, the Robinson family rushed to church. They were running late, so the children had to finish breakfast in the car. Victoria ate carefully, trying not to spill, not to upset anyone. But the car's movement and her stress made her vomit, staining her dress. The adults were late, but somehow, the 3-year-old was blamed. In the church bathroom, witnesses saw a disturbing scene. Ariel was washing Victoria's dress in the sink while the girl stood nearby in just her underwear, shivering from the cold. "Is she sick?" one parishioner asked, concerned. "No," Ariel answered with a cold smile. "She just eats too much and makes herself throw up. It's a game." Another witness heard Ariel tell the trembling girl, "Oh, you're cold. Girls who make themselves throw up deserve to be cold." A 3-year-old child stood half naked in a public bathroom, while an adult woman mocked her. No one intervened. After the service, the family went home. Ariel went grocery shopping, leaving Jerry with the kids. When Jerry bathed Victoria, he saw a large dark bruise on her lower back. He didn't know where it came from, or didn't want to. That was the moment an adult could have saved a child's life. Ask questions, call a doctor, protect her. Instead, Jerry quietly bathed her and put her to bed. On January 14th, 2021, the next morning began as usual. The older boys left for school, leaving Victoria alone with her abusers. Jerry made pancakes, then went out to work in the yard. Victoria was left eating breakfast with Ariel. The girl ate too slowly for her adoptive mother's liking. "You don't get to tell me when you're done," Ariel yelled at the 3-year-old. Jerry heard his wife screaming. He heard Victoria's desperate crying, and he kept working outside. He heard the blows. He heard Ariel shouting that Victoria wasn't eating fast enough. And still, he stayed outside, busy with more and more tasks. This went on for over an hour. An hour while a 3-year-old was beaten for eating too slowly. An hour while an adult man listened and did nothing. When Jerry finally came back inside, he saw Ariel standing over Victoria with a belt. The little girl lay on the floor, barely breathing. "You went too far," he said. That was the only criticism Ariel received. They bathed the battered child in Epsom salts, hoping the swelling would go down. Jerry drove out to buy children's Tylenol for a girl who was dying. Victoria lay barely alive on the bed. Her small body was broken, but her heart still beat. Later in court, Jerry was asked, "What's the last thing you remember Tori saying to you?" "When she was lying on the bed, she told me she loved me," he said, "and I told her, 'I love you too, and I promise this won't happen again.'" Those were the last conscious words Victoria Rose Smith ever heard. Words of love from the man who had listened to her being beaten and done nothing. A 3-year-old girl who had only ever given love, died betrayed. Her body shuddered in pain. Every breath was a struggle. Her organs slowly shut down. Then she went limp. "Grandma, call 911. What's the emergency? Our daughter, she's unresponsive. She's drinking a lot of water. Tell me exactly. My 3-year-old daughter is choking on water right now." First responders arrived at 2:16 p.m. They immediately knew this was no accident. Victoria's small body was covered with deep bruises and cuts. The right side of her abdomen was black and blue. The inner surfaces of her thighs were bruised. "Oh my God," whispered a paramedic. These weren't injuries from a fall or play. They were the result of methodical, brutal beating by adult hands. They began CPR and rushed her to Prisma Health Greenville Memorial Hospital. Police were called for suspected child abuse and aggravated assault. Doctors saw injuries only seen in car crashes or falls from great heights. At 5:05 p.m. on January 14, 2021, Victoria Rose Smith was pronounced dead. The little girl who loved the color pink and cupcakes, who bossed around her big brothers and gave love to everyone, was killed by her adoptive mother in the house that was supposed to save her. The coroner said he had never seen such extensive damage in a child. Victoria suffered multiple blunt force injuries, as if she had been hit by a car, but no car hit her. A woman who once won a cooking show and claimed to love children did. The death was ruled a homicide. On January 19th, just 5 days later, the very day her adoption was supposed to be finalized, Ariel and Jerry Robinson were arrested for her murder. The irony was chilling. On the day the system would have made them her legal parents, they sat in jail. Ariel told police, "She bruises easily, she has sensitive skin, her brother kicks her, he has anger issues." Victoria's biological mother, Cassie, learned of her daughter's death from the news. She called social services and asked, "Is this my daughter?" "We don't owe you any explanations," a social worker replied, and hung up. When the family finally saw the photos on TV, they barely recognized her. The happy, chubby little princess was now a thin, terrified child with lifeless eyes. "We last saw our children happy, healthy, and thriving," said Victoria's aunt, "because the foster families before the Robinsons were amazing. She was funny, she was sassy, she had so much personality," said another relative. "You couldn't be mad at her, not with how sweet she was. I just don't understand how anyone could do this to her." Even then, the family had to fight for the right to take Victoria's body from the state to bury her. The system that took her alive didn't want to let her go, even in death. She was finally buried in Travelers Rest, South Carolina. Cassie placed a teddy bear on her daughter's grave. In April 2022, Jerry Robinson pleaded guilty to aiding and abetting murder and agreed to testify against Ariel. In court, he described how Ariel beat the children with paddles and belts, how she especially hated when Victoria ate slowly, how he sometimes took food off her plate to help her avoid punishment. He told how he heard Ariel screaming and Victoria crying that final morning, and stayed in the garden for a full hour while a 3-year-old was beaten to death. Parishioners Gene Smith and Avery Santiago testified about what they saw in the church bathroom on January 13th. They had been horrified, but didn't intervene. Dr. Michael Ward, the chief medical examiner, explained that Victoria had been beaten so violently that her blood vessels burst, flooding her muscles and fat with blood. "If we lose enough blood," he told the jury, "the heart simply doesn't have enough volume left to pump." He described Victoria's injuries as severe and devastating, deep wounds that tore tissue from tissue, not just ordinary bruises. A pediatric intensive care doctor testified that her injuries were horrific, saying, "These are extensive injuries to a child's body caused by repeated blunt force trauma, the worst I've ever seen." In May 2022, Ariel Robinson went on trial. One witness recalled the final moments. "She hollered for Austin to come upstairs. When he came into the room, she was sitting on her stool. He looked at me and said, 'Is she breathing?' And I said, 'I think I hear her trying to breathe, but it sounds like there's fluid in her lungs.' They asked, 'Should I call 911?' And I said, 'Yeah, call 911. I don't know what to do.'" At trial, Ariel changed her strategy. She tried to shift the blame onto her husband, claiming he was the one who caused the bruises on Victoria's body. "She's lying," Jerry said about Ariel's accusations. Ariel insisted that Jerry had been left alone with the children and had anger issues, but the jury didn't believe her. After 4 days of testimony and only an hour and a half of deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous verdict: guilty of child murder. Ariel Robinson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jerry Robinson received the maximum sentence of 20 years, with credit for the 505 days he had already spent in pretrial detention. The Food Network immediately removed the entire season of Worst Cooks in America that featured Ariel from all streaming platforms. In early 2025, Ariel attempted to appeal her conviction and request a new trial, but the judge rejected her appeal. She will spend the rest of her life in prison. During her incarceration, Ariel has received multiple disciplinary actions, including refusing to obey orders and sexual misconduct. Victoria's aunt, Michelle Herbst, has vowed her niece's death will not be in vain. She is working with lawmakers on Victoria's Law, a reform of the South Carolina Department of Social Services. The law calls for frequent, unannounced inspections of foster and adoptive families, even after adoptions are finalized. If someone had just walked into that house without warning, Victoria would be alive. Victoria Rose Smith lived 3 years, 9 months, and 18 days. She was killed in the very house that was supposed to save her. But her story has become a catalyst for change that could save countless other children. The little princess commander is gone, but her voice still echoes, demanding justice. For all defenseless children, rest in peace, little angel Victoria. Thank you to everyone who watched this video all the way through. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this case in the comments, and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and a special thank you to everyone who has donated to support this channel. Your support means the world to me and gives me the motivation to keep creating new and meaningful investigations for you, my wonderful viewers. Thank you all so much.